Greetings, seekers, and welcome to the Library of Divine Echoes. I'm your host, Christopher Little, and today we are turning our gaze upward to the dimly lit upper reaches of cathedrals, the heavy capitals of Romanesque columns, and the wooden misericords of ancient choir stalls. We are tracking a face hidden in the leaves. This figure is widely recognized today as the Green Man. It remains one of the most ubiquitous, enigmatic, and fiercely debated motifs in Western architectural history, art, and cultural folklore. We will systematically dismantle the romanticized myths surrounding this leafy visage and uncover its true, exhaustive history. Today's journey will cover the physical manifestation. We will explore how this striking image primarily manifests as a human face surrounded by, composed of, or actively disgorging dense vegetation. A boundless geography. We will trace the motif as it transcends geographical and ecclesiastical boundaries. You will find it in locations as diverse as the ruins of Hatra in modern Iraq, the 13th century St. Nicholas Church in Cyprus, and the humble parish churches of rural Britain. The modern resurgence. We will examine how the Green Man has transcended stone and wood in the modern era. It has become a fixture on public house signs, a focal point of environmental and neo-pagan counterculture, and even a central motif on the official coronation invitation of King Charles III. The Pagan Myth. We will explore how for much of the 20th century a dominant narrative positioned the foliate head as a subversive pagan deity smuggled into Orthodox Christianity by clandestine stonemasons. The Orthodox reality. Finally, we will reveal the compelling evidence indicating that the foliate head was not a pagan intrusion, but a deeply Orthodox Christian symbol. We will uncover its ties to ancient apocryphal legends regarding the death of Adam, the Quest of Seth, and the mystical origins of the True Cross. So settle in as we push back the branches and step into the deep woods of history to meet the Green Man. The figure widely recognized today as the Green Man is one of the most ubiquitous, enigmatic, and fiercely debated motifs in Western agricultural history, art, and cultural folklore. Manifesting primarily as a human face surrounded by, or composed of, or actively disgorging dense vegetation, this striking image peers down from the corbels, capitals, roof bosses, and misericords of countless European churches, cathedrals, and secular buildings. The motif transcends geographical and ecclesiastical boundaries, appearing in locations as diverse as the 13th century St. Nicholas Church in Nicosia, Cyprus, the ruins of Hatra in modern Iraq, the grand Gothic cathedrals of France and England, and the humble parish churches of rural Britain. In the modern era, the Green Man has transcended stone and wood to become a fixture on public house signs, a focal point of environmental and neo-pagan counterculture, and a central motif on the official coronation invitation of King Charles III of the United Kingdom. Despite its near-universal presence in medieval European architecture, the interpretation of the Green Man remains heavily contested, often revealing more about the era in which the analysis was conducted than the medieval stonemasons who carved the figures. For much of the 20th century, a dominant narrative positioned the foliate head as a subversive pagan deity, a primordial spirit of fertility, rebirth, and the wild woods that clandestine stonemasons smuggled into the sacred spaces of Orthodox Christianity. This interpretation views the Green Man as an indelible survival of pre-Christian European religion, linking the architectural carving to seasonal folklore characters such as Jack in the Green, the King of May, Robin Hood, and the ancient mythos of the dying and resurrected vegetation god. However, modern historical, art historical, and theological scholarship has systematically dismantled this romanticized pagan survival hypothesis. Contemporary experts emphasize that the motif, formerly termed the foliate head or foliate mask, possesses deep roots in late Roman and Hellenistic art, having migrated through the Byzantine and Islamic worlds before arriving in Western Europe. More significantly, compelling evidence indicates that within the context of medieval English architecture, the foliate head was not a pagan intrusion, but a deeply Orthodox Christian symbol. Specifically, it is tied to ancient apocryphal legends regarding the death of Adam, the quest of Seth, and the mystical origins of the True Cross. This comprehensive report provides an exhaustive analysis of the Green Man phenomenon. It explores the morphological classifications of the carvings, deconstructs the historiography of the pagan survival theory initiated by Lady Raglan in 1939, examines the historical reality of the Green Man in early modern pageantry, and details the rigorous theological frameworks that explain the motif's profound Christian significance. Furthermore, it catalogues prominent manifestations of the foliate head in British architecture, traces its evolution into the secular realm of tavern signage, and analyzes its enduring cultural legacy into the 21st century. While the term Green Man is applied broadly in contemporary vernacular, art historians and architectural scholars categorize the foliate head motif into distinct typologies based on the specific interaction between the human face and the surrounding vegetation. These variations are not merely aesthetic choices. They reflect the evolution of Romanesque and Gothic architectural styles, stylistic cross-pollination, and nuanced symbolic meanings. The motif generally represents a male figure, though extremely rare green women exist, which some scholars theorize may be inspired by ancient deities like Asherah or simply serve as female counterparts to the traditional motif. The defining characteristic of the Green Man is the integration of the human form with nature, typically using the leaves of the oak, hawthorn, vine, or acanthus. The three primary morphological categories, alongside notable subvariants, have been broken down, and that detail is as follows. Classification: the foliate head. Visual characteristics: the face is entirely composed of or heavily obscured by green leaves. The facial features, eyes, nose, mouth, emerge organically from the foliage, blurring the boundary between humanity and nature. Symbolic and architectural implications: represents the total assimilation of man into the natural order. This type is closely linked to classical depictions of nature deities and is often found in earlier Romanesque architecture and later arts and crafts revivals. Classification: the disgorging head. Visual characteristics: vegetation actively spews or erupts from the figure's open mouth. The vines or branches often extend outward to form intricate patterns, sometimes bearing flowers, fruits, or berries. Symbolic and architectural implications: this is the most theologically charged variant, directly linked to the Christian legend of the Quest of Seth, wherein the seeds of the tree of mercy sprout from the mouth of the deceased Adam. Classification: the bloodsucker head. Visual characteristics: the most grotesque variant, where foliage sprouts from multiple facial orifices simultaneously, including the tear ducts, nostrils, mouth, and ears. Symbolic and architectural implications: often interpreted as a memento mori, symbolizing the inevitable decay of the flesh and the triumph of the natural cycle over human mortality. It aligns with the Gothic fascination with the grotesque and human impermanence. Classification: the peeper, Jack in the Green. Visual characteristics: a more subtle, benign carving where a human face peers out from behind a separate carving of leaves or branches, rather than being physically composed of or penetrated by the vegetation. Symbolic and architectural implications: suggest an observational or guardian spirit. This variation is frequently found tucked away in the intricate woodwork of choir stalls, the stone foliage of roof bosses, or peeping from behind other carvings. The architectural execution of these motifs shifted dramatically over centuries. In the Romanesque and Norman periods, late 11th to 12th century, foliate heads were often carved onto the heavy capitals of columns. As European architecture transitioned into the early English Gothic style, circa 1175 to 1275, heavy columns were replaced by clustered shafts of dark purebeck marble, and the capitals became richly carved with stem and leaf disgorging heads. The subsequent decorated Gothic, 1275 to 1375, and Perpendicular Gothic, from 1375 onwards, periods brought highly naturalistic depictions. The classical Mediterranean acanthus leaf was frequently replaced by native British flora such as the oak leaf, acorn, and hawthorn berry. The placement of the carvings also expanded drastically. They migrated from column capitals to roof bosses, corbels, tympanums, and the wooden misericords of choir stalls, often elevated far above the congregation's direct line of sight in the dimly lit upper reaches of cathedrals. To fully grasp the architectural presence of the Green Man in Northern Europe, one must trace its stylistic lineage back to antiquity. The formal artistic motif of the foliate head predates medieval Christianity, highlighting a complex cross-cultural exchange that spanned centuries and continents. The earliest aesthetic ancestors of the foliate head are found in Hellenistic and late Roman art. In the Roman Empire, leaf masks were utilized extensively to depict mythological figures associated with nature, water, and vegetation. A prominent early example is found on the 4th century silver salver from the Mildenhall treasure, discovered at a Roman villa site in Suffolk, England. This artifact features a partly foliate mask generally agreed to represent the sea god Oceanus or Neptune, surrounded by Bacchic imagery. Another late 4th century carving in St. Abra in St. Hilaire-le-Grand, France, features a man disgorging vegetation from his mouth, firmly establishing the stylistic origin in the late classical period. Art historians also note formal connections with Iron Age Celtic art, particularly the masks found in the plastic style metalwork of Latine culture, where human faces emerge from stylized vegetal ornaments. However, the direct architectural lineage points eastward. Historical analysis by scholars such as Ronald Hutton and Kathleen Basford indicates that the Roman motif migrated to the east, being absorbed into the artistic traditions of India and the medieval Islamic world. From the Arab Empire, it eventually returned to Christian Europe, initially utilized as decorative marginalia by monks illuminating religious manuscripts. The Green Man motif was not indigenous to Anglo-Saxon England. There is no direct pre-conquest evidence of its existence in British stone architecture. The motif abruptly disappeared in the late 11th and 12th centuries, imported from northern France by the conquering Normans. As wealthy Norman patrons commissioned a massive wave of Romanesque church building across England, they dictated the use of continental decorative schemes. Masons relied heavily on illuminated text to transfer these designs into stone. For instance, the richly decorated St. Alban's Psalter, produced circa 1120 to 1140 in the Abbey's scriptorium at St. Albans, includes numerous translations of disgorging heads, which served as direct templates for the stone capitals carved by Norman masons. This invalidates theories suggesting that the Green Man was a covert cipher of Anglo-Saxon resistance against Norman domination. Rather, he was a Norman import himself. Despite its well-documented classical origins and Norman transmission, the modern popular understanding of the Green Man as an ancient Celtic or pre-Christian pagan god of the forest is largely a 20th century construct. Prior to 1939, the architectural carvings were known among antiquarians and art historians simply as foliate heads, foliate masks, or tête de feuille. The profound transformation of the foliate head into the mythological Green Man is directly attributable to amateur folklorist Julia Somerset, the Lady Raglan. In March 1939, Lady Raglan published an incredibly influential, albeit singular, article in the journal Folklore titled The Green Man in Church Architecture. Her interest had been sparked a few years earlier by the Reverend J. Griffith, a vicar and fellow folklorist, who drew her attention to a peculiar carving on the south corbel of the chancel arch in St. Jerome's Church, Langham, Monmouthshire, Wales. While Griffith suggested the carving, a man's face with oak leaves growing from the mouth and ears, symbolized the spirit of inspiration, Raglan posited a far more provocative theory. She named the carving the Green Man. Although Lady Raglan is frequently credited with coining the term, historical records prove that the phrase Green Man had existed in the English language for centuries, referring primarily to pageant characters and public house signs. Her true contribution was the unprecedented intellectual synthesis of three previously distinct phenomena. 1. The medieval architectural foliate head. 2. The historical Green Man pub signs. 3. The rural folklore characters associated with May Day celebrations. Following her initial discovery at Langham, Lady Raglan began identifying similar carvings across Britain, from the font at Stowe Minster in Lincolnshire to the capital of a nave pillar at Melrose Abbey in Scotland. She quickly garnered the support of prominent architectural scholars. Notably, the term Green Man was subsequently adopted by Sir Nicholas Pevsner in his definitive 46-volume series, The Buildings of England, which effectively cemented the nomenclature in British architectural history. Lady Raglan's analytical framework was heavily indebted to Sir James George Frazer's monumental work of comparative anthropology, The Golden Bough. Frazer's methodology involved drawing intuitive connections between global myths and rituals, positing a universal, pre-Christian fertility religion centered around the cyclical death and resurrection of a vegetation god or tree spirit. Applying Frazer's lens, Raglan argued that the foliate heads in Christian churches were direct representations of this pan-European, pagan fertility deity existing as an unofficial paganism alongside Orthodox Christianity. To substantiate this, she pointed to surviving folk customs, notably the Castleton Garland ceremony in Derbyshire, as living proof of this ancient religion. Held traditionally on May 29th, the Castleton ceremony involves constructing a massive bell-shaped garland out of wooden laths covered in mayflowers and oak twigs, weighing upwards of 12 stone. This heavy floral structure is worn over the head and shoulders of a man designated as the King, historically known as the Green Man, who looks out through a small viewing hole. Raglan noted that this specific visual, a man's face peering from a heavy enclosure of foliage, perfectly mirrored the Green Man carvings, specifically pointing to a 13th century carving in the Southwell Minster chapter house as an exact stone replica of the Garland King. At the climax of the Castleton ceremony, the garland is hauled to the top of the church tower and fastened to a pinnacle, where it hangs for a year. Taking the theory further into the macabre, Raglan theorized that such ceremonies were the sanitized remains of ancient spring sacrifices where a human representative of the god, akin to Odin or Attis, was ritually hanged and decapitated to ensure agricultural fertility. She cited specific carvings of foliate heads with prominently protruding tongues, such as those at Lalantio Crocine and Norwich Cathedral, as evidence of this grim origin, arguing that the protruding tongue was a physiological symptom of death by hanging. She even postulated that the modern custom of hanging floral bells over a bride and groom at weddings was not related to church bells, but was a survival of the bell-shaped floral garland of the sacrificed green man. Despite its immense popularity and romantic appeal, Raglan's thesis is fundamentally flawed and unsupported by rigorous historical or archaeological evidence. Neither Frazer nor Raglan could demonstrate an unbroken lineage connecting pre-Christian Celtic paganism to the 12th century stonemasons who carved the foliate heads. As previously established, the green man motif did not appear in British architecture until after the Norman conquest. It was a continental import, not an indigenous Celtic survival. Furthermore, the assertion that a devoutly orthodox medieval society, overseen by powerful bishops and abbots, would allow subversive pagan idols to be prominently displayed on royal tombs and high altars defies logical historical analysis. The medieval populace was overwhelmingly Christian, and their churches reflected the orthodox tastes of their patrons, not the subversive rebellions of pagan craftsmen. Nevertheless, the pagan survival theory resonated deeply with the 20th century public. As noted by modern scholars like Caroline Larrington, the green man has an ancient vegetation god, was effectively invented in 1939 to serve a world that was beginning to realize how impending industrialized warfare and unchecked industrialization were degrading humanity and the planet. The notion of an ancient, harmonious, earth-centric spirituality offered a comforting alternative to modern alienation. If the architectural foliate head was not traditionally called the green man prior to 1939, to what did the term originally refer? A rigorous examination of 16th and 17th century texts reveals that the green man was a well-documented living participant in civic pageants, theatrical performances, and mayoral processions. In Tudor and Stuart England, a green man was an actor or civic employee dressed in a suit of leaves, moss, or short grass, often adorned with a floral garland. The primary functional role of these figures was to act as whifflers, crowd control agents tasked with clearing the way for parades, mayoral processions, and outdoor theatrical events. To effectively scatter the dense throngs of onlookers, the pageant green men carried large, formidable clubs. Notably, these Herculean clubs were frequently embedded with squibs, early fireworks or firecrackers. The sparks and loud explosions generated by these firework clubs were highly effective at pushing back crowds and maintaining a clear pathway. The earliest recorded use of the term green man in English literature appears in this exact theatrical context. In George Whetstone's 1578 play, the second part of the famous history of Promos and Cassandra, a stage direction explicitly instructs actors to be apparelled like green men at the mayor's feast with clubs of fire-work to keep the passage clear. Similarly, Robert Wilson's 1594 play, The Cobbler's Prophecy, features a character nervously stating they will stay out of the green men's way to avoid having their clothing burned by the fireworks. The pageant green man was heavily conflated with the mythological wild man of the woods, known in medieval English lore as Woodwas or Woodhouse. The wild man was a staple of medieval iconography, traditionally depicted as a savage, hirsute figure, naked save for a thick covering of body hair, wearing a leafy crown and a pelvic garland, and wielding an uprooted tree bough as a club. They were considered part of the mythical dwarfish moss folk, representing the untamed wilderness. Detailed descriptions of royal entertainments from the 17th century illustrate this overlap. An account from a 1610 parade in Chester describes these pageant figures as savage-like men wearing habits, embroidered and stitched on with eye leaves, sporting huge black shaggy hair, black beards very ugly to behold, and carrying great clubs in their hands. Because the wild, erratic, and aggressive behavior of the green men and the wild man suggested a state of uninhibited intoxication and revelry, the figure eventually became closely associated with alcohol, brewing, and distillation. When Lady Raglan observed the leaf-covered face in her local Welsh church centuries later, she borrowed the name of these historical pageant characters, figures who indeed wore leaves and participated in civic rituals, and retroactively applied it to the medieval stone carvings, creating a semantic bridge that forever altered the motif's legacy. To understand the true intended meaning of the foliate head in medieval ecclesiastical culture, one must discard the Frazerian pagan lens and examine the theological frameworks of the Middle Ages. Recent scholarship, championed most notably by Christian author and visual arts scholar Stephen Miller in his 2022 landmark book The Green Man in Medieval England, Christian Shoots from Pagan Roots, demonstrates that the motif is profoundly orthodox. Far from being a subversive pagan idol, the Green Man, specifically the disgorging head variant, serves as a complex theological emblem representing the condition of fallen humanity, the promise of redemption, and the cosmic cycle of salvation originating with Adam and culminating with Jesus Christ. The Green Man is a depiction of every man, the mythical, death-bound first man in receipt of God's grace. The visual key to decoding the disgorging foliate heads lies in the apocryphal literature and hagiographies that were immensely popular during the medieval period, particularly the Golden Legend, Legenda Aurea. Compiled in the 13th century by Jacobus de Voragine, an Italian chronicler and Archbishop of Genoa, this text was a cornerstone of medieval Christian education and served as the primary source material for sermons, bestiaries, and religious art. Hidden within the Golden Legend is the narrative of the Quest of Seth and the death of Adam. The legend dictates that after living exactly 930 years on earth, Adam lay on his deathbed and dispatched his son, Seth, to the gates of paradise, the Garden of Eden, to fetch the oil of mercy to cure him. Seth did not receive the oil. Instead, the angel of mercy responsible for guarding Eden provided Seth with certain grains of the fruit of the tree of mercy, often described as 3 seeds, kernels, or twigs from the tree of life. Seth returned to find his father still alive. Upon hearing of the angel's gift and the promise it held, Adam laughed for the first and only time in his life, and subsequently died. Fulfilling the angel's instructions, Seth placed the 3 seeds beneath Adam's tongue before burying him in the Vale of Hebron. Miraculously, out of the dead Adam's mouth grew 3 saplings. The legend states that centuries later, the wood from these exact trees was harvested and used to construct the true cross upon which Jesus was crucified. This narrative perfectly explains the specific, otherwise bizarre iconography of the disgorging green man. The stone face spewing vines and leaves from its mouth is a literal visual depiction of the deceased Adam in the grave. The foliage erupting from his lips represents the 3 seeds of the tree of mercy sprouting into new life. In this Christian paradigm, Adam is the original green man, overtaken by the forces of time, death, and natural decay, the post-fall world. However, the vegetation he disgorges is not merely a symbol of biological fertility, it is the physical material of the true cross. Through the crucifixion of Christ, who is theologically referred to as the second Adam or last Adam, the sin introduced by the first Adam is atoned for. The chaos and mortality of death are reordered by the cross, which acts as the ultimate cosmic tree pushing time and chaos back to the margins, granting humanity access to eternal life. This understanding illuminates why the motif is featured so prominently in the most sacred areas of cathedrals, rather than being sneaked in by rebellious carvers. The Green Man is a profound expression of the transformative power of Christianity, depicting the promise of resurrection and mercy erupting directly from the mouth of fallen humanity. To comprehend the scale, diversity, and significance of the Green Man motif, it is necessary to examine its specific applications in prominent British religious sites. The geographic and architectural spread of the foliate head confirms its status as a central pillar of medieval and early modern design. Cathedrals, minsters, and abbeys. The highest concentration of masterfully carved foliate heads resides in the major ecclesiastical centres of Britain. Westminster Abbey, as a royal peculiar and the coronation church of the British monarchy, Westminster Abbey contains several highly significant foliate heads, proving the motif's elite status. On the northern side of the high altar lies the magnificent 13th century tomb of Edmund, Earl of Lancaster, nicknamed Crouchback for the Crusader cross worn on his back, the son of Henry III. The elaborate canopy features the remains of original medieval paint and a small green man carving positioned near a depiction of a praying knight. The abbey also features a prominent green man atop the arch of the choir screen, under which monarchs passed during their coronation, and tiny green men on the wooden half-gates of the 14th century chapel of Our Lady of the Pew. Canterbury Cathedral features multiple examples, including early 12th century shoot disgorging heads on the capital decoration of columns in the western crypt, carved from cane stone by French masons, and a leaf mask ceiling boss in the Black Prince chantry. Winchester Cathedral features a naturalistic head spewing giant leaves containing exactly 3 berries or pips, an unmistakable theological reference to the 3 seeds placed under Adam's tongue in the Quest of Seth. Exeter Cathedral. The 14th century Lady Chapel contains a brightly painted and gilded roof boss of a green man and a prominent 13th or 14th century carved corbel depicting the Virgin and Child positioned directly above a disgorging green man, symbolizing Christ's triumph over the fallen Adam. Rosslyn Chapel, Scotland. Famous for its intricate and esoteric carvings, this 15th century chapel in Rosslyn Village boasts over 100 green man carvings both inside and outside the building, showcasing the motif in the various stages of life, from a youthful green boy to adult bearded men and even green skeletons. The Templar Enigmas. The Knights Templar, the formidable monastic military order, incorporated the foliate head into their highly distinctive architecture, often blending it with Middle Eastern influences. Temple Church, London. Built to echo the circular Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the Temple Church features original Norman carvings around its internal arcade. Notably, the exterior of the western doorway features green man heads sprouting foliage, serving as protective or liminal markers for those entering the sacred space. St. Michael's Church, Galway Hill. Located in Herefordshire, this remarkably preserved 13th century Templar church features a unique green man on its chancel arch. Unlike standard foliate heads, this figure possesses horns and disgorges what appear to be tessellated tendrils, ropes, or even snakes. The Moorish and Arabian architectural influences at Galway suggest the Templars may have encountered variations of the motif during their time in the Holy Land. Parish churches and secular survivals. The motif is equally prevalent in smaller parish churches across the UK. All Saints' Church, Sutton, Wiltshire, features a magnificent late 13th or early 14th century green man carving, disgorging hawthorn leaves and berries, with intricately carved birds feeding upon them. St. Bartholomew the Great, London. Visitors can spot foliate heads incorporated into the ancient Norman architecture. Church of St. Peter, St. Paul, and St. Thomas of Canterbury, Bovey Tracy, Devon, features a 15th century carved wooden screen adorned with oak leaf flourishes and green man faces, alongside a carving of a sleeping dragon. St. Lawrence, Hawkhurst, Kent, features a mid-15th century font adorned with a green man looking toward the tower. The English Baroque Revival. Following the destruction of Old St. Paul's in the Great Fire of London, 1666, Sir Christopher Wren's English Baroque masterpiece brought a classical revival of the foliate head. The magnificent wooden choir stalls, carved by the legendary master sculptor Grinling Gibbons in the late 17th century, featured exquisite foliate heads. Gibbons' masterful technique involved carving intricate natural details individually and joining them together, achieving a delicate realism that echoed the pagan classical roots of the motif while serving an Anglican liturgical space. While the architectural Green Man remained tethered to ecclesiastical settings, the name Green Man found immense popularity in the secular realm of British public houses. Today there are over 70 pubs across Great Britain bearing the name, with several historic establishments in London serving as prime examples. The adoption of the name for taverns in the 17th and 18th centuries did not originate from the church carvings. Instead, it derived from the aforementioned pageant whifflers and the mythological wild man of the woods. Because the wild man was a symbol of uninhibited nature, revelry, and intoxication, the worshipful company of distillers incorporated the figure into their heraldic coat of arms in the 17th century. The distiller's arms featured a distilling apparatus, a still, supported by wild men or Native American Indian figures clad in green leaves. Consequently, many taverns adopted names like the Green Man and Still. A famous 18th century coaching inn by this name was located at 335 Oxford Street in London. In the early 19th century, it became a notorious haunt for professional cricketers and bookmakers, serving as a venue where large sums of money were wagered and matches were illicitly fixed. The building was eventually purchased and demolished in 1901 by the Baker Street and Waterloo Railway. Another historic example is the Green Man in London's Soho district. Located at 57 Berwick Street, a pub has stood on this site since 1738, with the current Grade 2 listed yellow stock brick building dating to the 19th century. Interestingly, the signage for pubs underwent an evolution. As the cultural memory of the leaf-clad pageant whiffler faded, pub signs often transitioned to depicting a forester dressed in green clothing, frequently conflating the Green Man with Robin Hood or the occupational dress of gamekeepers. Even today, efforts are made to preserve these historical artifacts, such as the rescue of a painted Green Man sign by Peter Oldreeve from a demolished pub in Flackwell Heath, ensuring its preservation in folkloric archives. In the modern era, the Green Man has transcended both its medieval Christian roots and its origins in civic pageantry, evolving into a potent, highly malleable cultural icon. The 19th century Gothic revival and the arts and crafts movement reintroduced the foliate head as a decorative secular motif, reflecting a renewed appreciation for medieval craftsmanship and a rejection of industrial mass production. However, it was in the late 20th and early 21st centuries that the Green Man experienced a true cultural renaissance. Driven largely by the enduring appeal of Lady Raglan's pagan hypothesis, the Green Man has been enthusiastically adopted by neo-pagans, Wiccans, and proponents of alternative spirituality. For these groups, the figure represents the male counterpart to the Earth Mother, Gaia, a guardian of nature and an emblem of ecological balance and seasonal rebirth. This interpretation aligns seamlessly with modern environmentalism, transforming the Green Man into a symbol of resistance against ecological destruction. As detailed in Joe Livingston's analysis for The New Yorker, the figure's integration into counterculture is profound. In the 1970s and 80s, collectives like Peace Convoy traveled during solstices to Stonehenge, merging hippie folklore with the emerging rave circuit. The symbol was formally institutionalized in festival culture with the establishment of the Green Man Festival in Wales in 2003, and the adoption of the Green Man as the central theme for the famous Burning Man Festival in Nevada in 2007. Furthermore, Carolyn Denshaw's scholarship highlights how the Radical Fairies, a gay male countercultural group founded in 1979, adopted the Green Man, utilizing maypole rituals and pagan performances to forge a sense of spiritual liberation and belonging tied to the land. Modern literature frequently employs the Green Man to explore themes of trauma, colonialism, and man's alienation from nature. In Nina Lyon's book, Uprooted, she embraces Lady Raglan's view, actively attempting to revive a pagan fertility cult in Wales, while humorously dismissing academic medievalists as out of touch. Conversely, in Randolph Stowe's 1980 novel The Girl Green as Elderflower, the motif is used to examine the psychological legacy of colonialism, where a protagonist recovering from colonial trauma is haunted by a speaking face made of summer leaves. Scholar Caroline Larrington synthesizes these modern views, arguing that while the ancient vegetation god never historically existed, the Green Man was effectively invented in the 20th century to serve as a symbol for what the modern industrialized West lacks or excludes, a reminder that humans are inextricably bound to the natural world. The tension between the historical Christian reality of the foliate head and the modern pagan interpretation of the Green Man was thrust into the global spotlight in April 2023. Buckingham Palace revealed the official invitation for the coronation of King Charles III, designed by heraldic artist Andrew Jamieson. The central motif at the base of the invitation was a meticulously detailed Green Man, crowned with oak, hawthorn, and ivy, and featuring an acorn, a subtle nod to the Princess of Wales's coat of arms. The royal household's official press release described the figure as an ancient figure from British folklore, symbolic of spring and rebirth. This statement immediately sparked a debate among folklorists, historians, and theologians. Critics and environmentalists, such as Overseas Minister Zach Goldsmith, lauded the choice as a beautiful symbol of humanity's relationship with the natural world, aligning with the king's decades-long interest in environmentalism. Others suggest it was a subtle reference to Oak Apple Day, May 29th, the holiday commemorating the restoration of King Charles II, who famously hid in the Boscobel oak tree to escape parliamentarian forces and was responsible for restoring maypoles across England. However, academic historians pointed out that designating the Green Man as an ancient figure of British folklore inadvertently validated Lady Raglan's debunked 1939 theories. Theologians such as Stephen Miller argued that the Green Man is fundamentally a Christian and Judaic-derived motif linked to the Quest of Seth, making it entirely appropriate for the head of the Church of England, but for reasons entirely contrary to the popular pagan narrative embraced by the public. The Green Man is a testament to the complex, layered, and perpetually evolving nature of historical iconography. To dismiss the figure merely as a pagan woodland spirit is to ignore centuries of theological rigor, textual history, and breathtaking architectural mastery. Conversely, to view it strictly as an Orthodox Christian emblem of Adam and the True Cross is to overlook the vibrant history of early modern civic pageantry, the evolution of public house signage, and the intense modern psychological need for a symbol of environmental equilibrium. The exhaustive analysis of the foliate head motif reveals a fascinating trajectory of cultural adaptation. It began as a classical Roman nature mask honoring deities of the sea and vine. It migrated through the East before being adopted by Norman Masons, where it evolved into a profound medieval Christian allegory of death and redemption via the apocryphal Quest of Seth. Centuries later, it was secularized into the firework-wielding, leaf-clad whiffler of Tudor parades before settling on the tavern signs of Georgia and London. In 1939, it was fundamentally reimagined by Lady Raglan through a Frazerian anthropological lens. Her work, while historically flawed, inadvertently created a powerful modern myth that birthed an environmental, countercultural, and neo-pagan icon. The Green Man's enduring presence, from the somber 13th century tombs of Westminster Abbey to the neon-lit pub signs of Soho, the dusty plains of Burning Man, and onto the coronation invitations of modern monarchs, demonstrates that symbols are rarely static. The foliate head survives precisely because it straddles the boundary between order and chaos, humanity and nature, mortality and eternal rebirth. It remains a silent, leaf-shrouded witness to the perpetual human desire to find our reflection within the natural world. Find a comfortable, quiet place to sit or lie down. Close your eyes and allow your body to settle into the space beneath you. Take a deep, slow breath in and release it gently. With each exhalation, let go of the noise of the modern world. Imagine yourself stepping out of the bright, bustling present and into the cool, dimly lit nave of a grand, ancient cathedral. The air is still, smelling faintly of old stone and polished dark Purbeck marble. As your eyes adjust to the serene twilight, you gaze upward into the upper reaches of the architecture, towards the corbels, the capitals of the columns, and the high roof bosses. There, carved intimately into the stone and wood, you meet a gaze. It is the foliate head. Notice how the human face and the natural world are no longer separate. The features, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, emerge organically from a dense canopy of foliage. The boundaries between humanity and nature blur completely, representing our total assimilation into the natural order. Observe the leaves that make up this face. Perhaps they are the broad, native British flora, the familiar shape of the oak leaf, the hawthorn, or the trailing vine. Shift your focus to your own breath. As you inhale, imagine the rich, earthy scent of a deep forest. As you exhale, visualize the disgorging head variant of this ancient motif. See the life-giving vines and branches actively spewing from the figure's open mouth, extending outward to form intricate, beautiful patterns. In Christian folklore, this represents the everyman at rest, with the miraculous seeds of the tree of mercy sprouting from within to bring new life and redemption. Feel that same promise of renewal erupting from your own breath. You are breathing out life, watching it bear flowers, fruits, and berries into the world around you. As you rest in this quiet space, you might sense a subtle, benign presence, the peeper, a face gently looking out from behind a separate carving of leaves, acting as an observational, guardian spirit of the forest. You are watched over by the wild woods, held safely in the balance between the natural and the eternal. Take one more deep breath of this ancient woodland air. Feel the grounding energy of the earth beneath you. When you are ready, gently wiggle your fingers and toes and slowly open your eyes, bringing the quiet strength of the Green Man back into your day. And as we emerge from the dense foliage of history, we come to the end of our journey into the enigma of the Green Man. What we've uncovered today is a testament to the complex, perpetually evolving nature of historical iconography. The figure we so often dismiss merely as a pagan woodland spirit is in reality a masterful shapeshifter. Let's trace his extraordinary path one last time. Classical origins. He began as a classical Roman nature mask honoring the ancient deities of the sea and the vine. Architectural migration. The motif migrated through the east before being adopted by Norman masons, making its way into the grand ecclesiastical centers of Britain. Theological allegory. Within those sacred walls, he evolved into a profound medieval Christian allegory of death and redemption, deeply linked to the apocryphal Quest of Seth and the True Cross. Civic pageantry. Centuries later, the Green Man was secularized into the leaf-clad, firework-wielding whiffler of Tudor parades, clearing the way for mayoral processions. Tavern signage. The memory of those wild, uninhibited revelers eventually settled onto the tavern signs of Georgian London. The modern myth. Finally, in 1939, Lady Raglan fundamentally reimagined the motif through an anthropological lens. Her work, though historically flawed, inadvertently birthed a powerful modern myth that transformed the Green Man into the environmental, countercultural, and neo-pagan icon we recognize today. Whether you encounter him looking down from the somber 13th century tombs of Westminster Abbey, painted on a neon-lit pub sign in Soho, or meticulously detailed on a modern royal coronation invitation, one thing is certain: symbols are rarely static. The foliate head survives and thrives because it effortlessly straddles the boundary between order and chaos, between humanity and nature, between mortality and eternal rebirth. He remains a silent, leaf-shrouded witness to our perpetual human desire to find our own reflection within the natural world. Thank you for wandering through the historical woods with us today. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with a fellow history or folklore enthusiast. Until next time, keep looking up. You never know whose leafy face might be peering back at you from the stone